one of the best, most amazing leaders in this community fighting for the unhoused. We are happy to welcome the executive director of the National Coalition for the Homeless, Donald Whitehead. Hi, Donald.
Hi, how are you, Barbara? Really nice to hear from you, and I would echo that sentiment. One of the best to have served our country and also continuing to do the work for transformative justice. So happy to be here with you today.
Well, thank you. And you're joined by two of our wonderful, amazing TJC fellows, but they're also leaders in their own community working on issues involving the unhoused. You are joined by Bryan Sanders. You're joined by Constance Crockett. And you may remember, Donald, because you were kind enough to come to our training in September and to help us, as we do at every training, to make sure when we're talking about voting rights, that people understand the voting rights needs of the community that we call the homeless community. And I'm just, so happy that you agreed to join our show. First question, as people are looking out in this season, what do they need to know about the top priorities facing people who are unhoused?
Well, I would say first and foremost, HUD released a couple of days ago their annual point-in-time count. And according to the count, homelessness increased by 12%. Now, that particular count is a one-day count. So it's done in the late January and when it's cold outside. So it does give us trends and it does give us the ability to look at what might be the underlying causes. It is not a census of the homeless population. So the numbers are actually a lot higher than that. If you look at the Department of Education, they say over 1.5 million children are homeless every year in the school system. So one thing, homelessness is growing, no matter what count you look at. People are not homeless by choice. They're forced into homelessness by structural issues like the lack of affordable housing, criminalization, racial inequity. Those are the reasons people are homeless. It's not a moral issue. It's an issue that society has to fix.
Wow. And when you hear that, Connie, what Donald has just laid out, how does that relate to your experience as you're working with Courage?
It definitely relates because not only because I deal with kids who are in the LGBTQ community, that's not the only reason why they're homeless. A lot of the times they come to us because of these structural issues that is separate from their queerness. Things that are going on with their family, living paycheck to paycheck, abuse, drugs, mental illness, all things like this. So it's definitely a structural issue, and all these things really are connected. So I definitely agree with that.
And, Mr. Whitehead, one of the things I find really interesting in the research is that it seems to indicate that, a group that, and I'll be quite candid with you, a group that that was really not on my radar, and that is the kids that are under 5 years old, that they're completely off the charts. They're not even recognized. They're the invisible unhoused community because they're really not, what you laid out when you talked about the school-age kids, right? So they're not included within the school-age kids, so they're not on the charts there. They're not on anyone's lease, so you can't trace them there. But we know that there's an incredible rate of homelessness and housing insecurity for those kids under 5 years old. What are we to make of this?
Well, so here's a couple of things. One, in addition to those under 5-year-old children, children from 13 to 18 make up about 1% of the population. And those 13 to 18-year-olds are unaccompanied minors. So you have children who should be enjoying middle school actually sleeping on the sidewalks and in parks, and sometimes involved in activities that are extremely dangerous, like the sex trade, because they can't find a place to live. What we know is that in evictions are at a higher level than they were pre-pandemic. But the pandemic did offer, as a response to the pandemic, resources through the American the American Recovery Act. There was a lot of additional resources for prevention. Like prevention of evictions, and there were also resources to provide housing at hotels or other non-congregate facilities. Those resources have gone. So what we're seeing now are the effects of the resources that actually prove to us that if we put more resources into this issue, we can have some dramatic impact. Now, those resources are off the table. We had a real chance to truly raise the level of resources to the level of need through the Build Back Better plan. But we know that plan was actually, it failed because of a vote by one senator who has one of the worst homeless problems and addiction problems in the entire country.
Yes. You're talking about West Virginia, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. And thank you, for raising that because, Bryan, this resource issue, Amber Green just raised it also, about the lack of governmental attention to these issues. As a leader at Wisconsin Voices that is located in what, Daryl, the fifth poorest zip code in the United States. What do you think we need to do? Because when I say we, I'm talking about all our listeners from all 45 cities in the United States who listen to this show. What do we need to do to advocate for more resources?
Thank you for that question. Definitely loaded, but from what I've seen from all the angles, Ms. Barber and Daryl, I've seen so many, like Constance said, and seeing the different dynamics with it is structural. There has to be some lobbying going on at our capitals across the country, and we have to have our organizations that are working in smaller sectors and in the smaller nonprofits, and even the support from bigger nonprofits in each city to say, hey, we need to come together with some type of plan or structured documents to take up to them, and really, when it's a lobbying day at any capital, go up there and let them know we need more funding in our communities to support our people. A lot of these nonprofits locally are doing this on their own. They're either setting up with organizations like a Feeding America here in Milwaukee, which one of our partners here at Wisconsin Voices through Atkinson Park, they have a food giveaway every Wednesday to support the homelessness and the underserved in the community. Every Wednesday we go support them. We take over, we set up, and that's one of the things that I've grown. Another area where I've grown, because you see not only in the community where I grew up in, which is not too far outside of where Wisconsin Voices is, but just more in the inner city, how every day people are struggling to find housing and to receive nutritional food, not just the processed foods every day. So I think, like you said, I think it needs to be more focused on really putting the pressure on the people at the Capitol to tell them, like, hey, you guys are putting funding in all these areas, and even here they're doing a lot of road work every day. They put reckless driving bumpers and concrete pillars or concrete posts in the streets to stop the reckless driving, which I understand totally. But also we need to find a way to give a quarter more of this money or a third more of this money to these communities or just these organizations that are really in support of that. And I would say some of that would have to be them revitalizing some of these local buildings here and creating more homeless shelters, because the homeless shelters are overflowing. We just had a young lady yesterday from one of our partners. One of her connections ran into a young lady who's in the street who ran out of school. We couldn't even get it. They couldn't even let her into the school because the school wouldn't accept her before 9 o'clock. So it has to be some more programs set up inside these schools for young kids who are displaced or have these situations with young parents, like Constance mentioned, who aren't able to or don't know how, or Miss Amber mentioned, who don't know how to handle kids at such a young age because they haven't went through the experience themselves due to maybe homelessness in their lives.
And not only that, people forget that if you're under 21, you don't have all your legal rights. You can't rent a car. You can't, find many people want to accept your signature on many contracts. People don't understand just how terribly complicated this issue is for, people who are youth and homeless, and if their parents is even triply so. Donald, all over the country, people are making charitable contributions right now, making a decision how they're going to, in their New Year's resolution, give of themselves, their time, their personal power, their personal resources. Throughout the country, this is a crisis, homelessness. How do people listening to this show find out about a homeless group they can help in their city, in their county?
So let me give you a few ways that people can do that. There is the 211 network. So if you call 211, they'll give you a list of resources in your community. There is also HUD's website. You can go to HUD.gov under the topic homelessness, and it will give you locations of homeless service providers within that local community. You can reach out to our office by going online to info@nationalhomeless.org, and we can let you know where there are places that you can give your time and treasure. So it is important, though, that this is not the only time community-based organizations need help. It is the time when we get the most help, but we can use help year-round. It takes dollars to do advocacy. It takes dollars to do shelter and support. And, we are really hoping that people will consider doing it throughout the year and not just in the holiday season.
And, Mr. Whitehead, I know that we've spoken about the very young, and we've spoken about the teens, the middle teens, the young teens, and being homeless and special issues they face. But there's also an issue with regards to those that are in college, particularly HBCUs. There was a study done in 2020 by Hope Center for College, and they did a survey in 2020, and they found that some 55% of the students experienced housing insecurity, and 20% were homeless. Is there some special advice, some special recognition, some special analysis that you provide for those types of students,
Absolutely. Our board president, Dr. Rajni Shankar Brown, is a professor at Stetson University and has really moved us. And we have been doing this work for a while. So one of the things that you list in our bio for the show is the Education for Homeless Children and Youth Act. That act we helped pass back in the early 2000s, and it provided a liaison for every school district in the country. We're working to get that expanded to the youth population. Another youth population that we have really worked very hard on is those emancipated from foster care. So now, just recently, we work with HUD to create the FUP grant, that is the Family Unification voucher, that any student, any person leaving the foster care system, being emancipated, is eligible for a Section 8 certificate. Now,
wonderful.
Most communities don't know that.
Yes.
And just recently, we pushed HUD.
And hold that thought.
Sure.
We got to go to a break. We'll be right back. Don't you dare touch that dial. This is Igniting Change. We'll be right back.
WOL News Talk 1450 AM and 95.9 FM 959.
Good afternoon. This WOL traffic update is sponsored by Unbound.org.